to record my weekly show, and I'm glad that you can join me either online, live, or afterwards by watching this in the archives of YouTube. I'm going to start right away. I'm not going to do like a big pre-show like last week, because that's a bit boring. Instead, I'm going to do the show, and then I get back to the chat room, and we can do an after show, which is probably much more interesting for those of you that are watching this on YouTube. So I'm going to take my show notes here. By the way, I've just discovered how I can do chapters on YouTube, which is super simple, but it's going to be so much more useful for people that are watching this after the fact, because you can just skip over the banter and go to the various segments of my show much more easily. All right, I've got everything ready, so here we go. Hello there, I'm Father Roderick, and this is the first show of the new year. Well, technically, it's not my first show because I've already recorded an episode of The Walk, but definitely the first episode of my regular show. So glad you can join me. We have tons of things to talk about. Hopefully this is going to brighten up your day a little bit. I'll do my best, so sit back and relax. This whole new year is brought to you thanks to my patrons over at patreon.com/Father Roderick. They help me with their monthly micro donations and sometimes even some bigger donations. And it is a huge encouragement for me to keep on doing this in 2021. And, well, what I want to do is to bring you some hope, hopefully cheer you up a little bit, because this week has been crazy.
Do you know what's going on? This is what's happening in your world.
Face it, Catholics rule. We got Boston, South America, the good part of Ireland, and we're making serious inroads in Mozambique, baby.
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
Unless you've been living under a rock, you must have seen, just like I did, the images from the United States, where a lot of my listeners live, more specifically from Washington, D.C., and everything that happened there. It was pretty baffling, I have to say. It was almost unreal. At times I was like, am I watching like a B movie? You know, one of those disaster movies where they always destroy important buildings that you know, and all of a sudden this is real. And of course, my second thought was, this must be so hard for my friends in the United States to witness this, to see this happen to their own country, where there's already so much division and polarization, which is hard on everyone. And to see this culmination in violence and destruction, it was disheartening, and I felt really, really sorry for those of you that live in the U.S., because I've been to the United States so many times, and all I encounter are friendly people, are nice people, not at all this kind of mayhem, not at all this violence. And of course, every country has people that are kind, and people that are not, but that's the same here as well. But the thing is, of course, with media, when we're watching something like this and it's transmitted live all over the world, you kind of forget about the regular people, which is the vast majority. It's like what happened to the Catholic Church when there is a scandal, when there is something wrong, all of a sudden it kind of distorts your view of reality, and you only see what's wrong. But what you don't see is all the good people, all the people that are building up society and are being kind and are contributing to society. So what I wanted to do first and foremost is to just encourage you. Don't lose hope. Don't despair. This too shall pass. This has been part of history. And yeah, was this completely unexpected? No, of course not. The polarization has been amplifying year after year. And what you see now is the result of basically a process that's been going on for many years. And it started with words. It started with demonizing other people, seeing the others as the enemy. Think of the series, the TV series Lost. You remember that? In the first episode, or in the first season, we're introduced to the others. And very soon, the people that you're familiar with, the ones whose story you followed, identify the others as the enemy. It's a threat. We don't know who they are, so you know what? Let's not take any risk, and let's just approach them in a hostile way. But it's this, and then later on, of course, you discover that wait a minute. Well, not everyone on the other side is evil, and the more you get to know each other, the more you can forge new alliances and come together, etc. So I think in society it's the same thing. As soon as we start to turn society into black and white and think that we ourselves are the good guys and all the others are wrong, history has shown us, and also church history has shown us, that always results and leads to polarization and sometimes even to violence. And that's never going to help anyone. That's never going to build up a country. So, but trust yourself. Trust the good that is in you, and also believe in the good in others, even people that don't share your opinion and that look at the world differently because they are in a different world and sometimes in a different bubble. Like we have discovered how important these social media bubbles are in determining how we look at things and how we perceive reality. And sometimes my perception of reality can be completely different from my neighbor's perception of reality because he or she is in a different bubble. So the dangers of this kind of closed off media world that sometimes auto-generates around us, this kind of matrix that is influenced by all the algorithms of social media. We've seen where that can sometimes lead us to as a society. And I'm pretty sure that there's going to be a course correction over time. Hopefully we will learn from this. Nobody wants this violence. So hopefully that will make us smarter, and we need to have some patience now. And above all, hope that this is a shock to all of us. It's been baffling, especially if you don't live in the United States and you look at that and you're just like, what is happening? If this were zombies, this could be a TV series, but it's not. It's the sad reality right now. But it doesn't mean that it's always going to be like this. That there's always we have. I think a great capacity to learn and to do better. And sometimes when there's a lot of violence and people do things that are terrible, that will also awaken in many other people the will to do better and to improve and to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Now, of course, history also shows us that oftentimes we make the same mistakes over and over again and we don't learn from history. But that's not a given. You can always choose to do better and choose to contribute. What I think we should all avoid is fear. And instead of fear, we should have courage. We should be courageous and hopeful for the future. We should try to not see the world in black and white, but have a certain prudence in the way we judge others. Always look for the good in other people. Always try to awaken the better half of people around us, and also in ourselves. Just try to step away from anger and frustration or revenge. Instead, what we all need to seek is justice. Try to give to each other what we want for ourselves instead of hurting the other person in the same way the other person has hurt us. It's those mechanisms of fear and hatred and revenge that are destroying society. The opposite, the virtues. If you look up the cardinal virtues of St. Thomas Aquinas. Look for virtues in Star Wars, if Thomas Aquinas is not your cup of tea. There are so many stories that can teach us what the way is to healing, to peace, to a positive future. And try to nurture those values in yourself. Try to grow these virtues in yourself. That, I think, is a much more important contribution to your country and to society in general than just, lashing out to those others that are destroying everything. Anyway, that's what I wanted to share with you. Don't despair. Always think of Luke Skywalker. I know there is good in you. And try to look at the world through that positive perspective. That's not being naive, by the way. You always have to also closely watch what's going on. Try to read the signs of times. But the first question should not be, what does the other person do wrong? But what can I do better? What can I do to make things better?
How do you not like movies?
They're predictable. Like, the guy gets the girl, and that kid sees dead people, and Darth Vader is Luke's father.
Not liking movies is like not liking puppies.
They're fine. I just get bored and never make it to the end.
You need a movie education. You need a movication. Now I'm gonna give it to you.
I started watching this series on Netflix that is really outrageous and scary and also a lot of fun and very relatable. The series is called We Are the Champions, and it's not about Queen, the rock band. This is about people that are trying to be number one in whatever extreme thing you can imagine. I've only watched the first episode, but the trailer is really promising to be that this first season is going to be a lot of fun. I think did I put the trailer somewhere in one of my browser windows because I want to play it here before I talk about the series. Maybe I've already scrolled away from this. You know what? Let me just re-enter that in YouTube. So that would be trailer. So the series is called We Are the Champions. We Are the Champions, and it's on Netflix. There we go. The official trailer. Let me play that first.
At the heart of every tradition, something that our ancestors wanted us to know. While we may be mortal, we cannot live in fear.
If the cheese does come over here, protect those kids.
For the cheese!
6 competitions so big, you've probably never heard of them. Cheese rolling.
Scares me. I just need to face it.
Chili
I've never
eating.
seen anybody go through that much pain and just keep on going.
Frog jumping.
Really like toads. I love frogs. I'm a jump guy.
Yo-yo.
Obligated to push the envelope of what's possible.
Fantasy hairstyling.
Never win. That's my motivation.
Dog
it is
dancing.
a very, very difficult sport. Definitely the most difficult dog sport.
This is it. Showtime. What the hell am I doing?
I was just talking to myself. I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna die.
That's a great day to jump some frogs.
I may get disqualified, but I bet you I catch the eye of everyone in that audience.
Make some noise! 3, 2, 1, eat!
We are the risk takers, the record breakers, history makers.
The hopes of walking away saying, I won.
We are the champions. That's a brilliant trailer, by the way. That's really well edited. It makes you curious. It's got pizzazz. It's got energy. I love this series. So I watched the first episode, which is about this strange phenomenon of cheese rolling. I'd never heard of it. So this is about a small country town in the UK. And every year, there is this hill which has a slope that is about 45 degrees. And then there is this tradition of rolling a big cheese wheel down that hill, and people have to chase it. And it's not about catching the cheese itself, because the cheese is going like 130 kilometers per hour, so it's super fast. It's almost falling vertically. But it's about ending first, being at the bottom of the hill first. This is not a nice slope. It's super muddy. It's full of bumps. It's extremely dangerous, highly eroded. And so the first thing you see is that people are literally tumbling over each other trying to get down that hill. You see people break bones, break joints. It looks like the most dangerous thing you can do. And yet the first episode follows this young woman who wants to be first, not just once, not just twice, but 3 times in a row. And I'm not going to spoil it, but the entire episode shows her motivation to do this and how far she's willing to go to end first and to be the champion of this cheese rolling event. It's very well filmed. It shows a kind of a quirky side of reality, and at the same time, it touches upon themes that we are all very familiar with. Because who hasn't dreamed of being first in whatever, sports or contest or whatever? We all have somewhere deep inside of us this desire to be champions in what we do, to be the best. And you know what? This made me think about my own, sometimes my own ambitions. Where did it come from? And why am I sometimes just working so hard to not just to deliver something that is okay, but to be the best of the best? I think in my personal situation, that comes from my childhood, where often I was rejected. When in school, when we were having these hours where we do sports, I would always be picked last because I was not very good at sports. I didn't excel in all the things that were popular among the kids. And I think that in some cases in my life, when I was overly ambitious and I worked so hard, even endangering my own health to be the best, it's kind of a way to compensate for the always being last in school. I always tried to have the highest, the best results in school. Always go for the A+ instead of the C-, because, and if you live in, this is the American rating system. In the Netherlands, we have ratings that go from 1 to 10. So I always went for the 9.5 or the 10 instead of the 6. Where the 6 would have gotten me probably just as far in life as a 10. But I wanted to be the best, and I couldn't stand it when there were other children in my class that would outrank me in these disciplines where I wanted to be the best. Now, of course, that helped me to work hard in school, but I think it sometimes also made me very insecure, and always, nowadays, I sometimes sabotage myself because I'm spending so much effort in trying to deliver that I'm not taking into account things like my health. And in this series, you see the same thing. This girl really wants to win, wants to be the champion, and she is ready to break all her bones in order to win. And you're watching that and you think, like, that is ridiculous. Why would you do that? And then when you stop and think about your own life, you're like, wait, I am doing the same in other areas of life. I will never run after a wheel of cheese and risk breaking my bones, but I'm running after other accomplishments where I want to show the world, and maybe I want to show, these kids from back then, back in time, like, you see, I'm good at something. I'm worth being appreciated. I am worth being loved. And a lot of the motivation is maybe false. It's not false. It's real, and it's human. But I wonder, am I doing this because I truly enjoy it, because I really want to contribute to the world, or am I doing this just to compensate for perceived values perceived failures in my past, or the lack of having been loved? Some people say that about Trump and about other politicians. Maybe the reason that they try to get such huge crowds to love them and worship them is because of parental problems and not having been loved and appreciated when they were young. I mean, your childhood can have such a massive impact on how we behave later on in life. And, well, this series really showed me a mirror. And maybe I should stop running after cheese wheels a little bit more and try to be more aware of the importance of staying healthy and not overexerting myself. Anyway, highly recommend it. We Are the Champions on Netflix. And with that, it is time for a short visit to the Peculiar Bunch.
Catholics rock!
So in the previous segment, I was talking about the importance of childhood experiences for the rest of your life. Well, that...
Catholics can be a peculiar bunch. No meat on Friday.
Oh, meat? What do they eat? Light bulbs?
Well, before Marge interrupted me, that is a nice segue into the topic of today's peculiar bunch, and that is the importance of family.
Man, you guys got more crazy rules than Blockbuster Video.
I think that we all agree about the importance that our experiences in our family in different ways have impacted who we are today, how we behave, how we treat others, and maybe also our own way of running our family. And that can be in a positive way, and it can also be in a negative way. If we come from broken families, if we have gone through abuse, or our parents have failed us in some aspects of life, that oftentimes will carry through in our present day. It can have both the effect of motivating us to do better, and to go beyond that. And I think that people have oftentimes an incredible resilience to overcome even, situations where a family was broken or hardship or anything. But sometimes it can also still have it may have caused wounds, like residual hurt that is easily triggered when we are in situations later in life that remind us of those, of our childhood years. I think you can say in general that a positive, motivating, balanced family life usually bears a lot of fruit later on in life. And that is why taking care of families and helping them to create an environment where people can grow and feel safe and feel encouraged and can develop positive virtues is something that we as a society, and I would add to that as a church, we should work to do. We should do what we can to make that happen. And it's not by accident that this has been an important theme in many Christian churches, and especially in the Catholic Church, where it's not just about defending the family against everything that can destroy it. That is a type of rhetoric that I don't like that much, because it's so negative. It's always like, oh, but there's this sacred family, and then there's all this evil in society and in culture, and we need to stand up for the family. And it's like, yeah, but you know what? Instead of first looking at all those enemies of the family, why don't you focus on the families that you have and ask yourself, how can we help them? Because ultimately, it's much better to work on the inner strength of families so that they can defend themselves against, the threats, rather than, trying to be the hero and neglecting what is truly important, and that is helping families, helping parents. It's always better to create light yourself than only complain about the darkness. So this is why Pope Francis has announced the year of the family according to Amoris Laetitia, which is this exhortation that he wrote 5 years ago. Well, in March this year, it's going to be 5 years ago, which was about the joy of love, the joy it brings, but also about the importance that love generates joy, and that joy can help us to love better. It's a beautiful document. It has been talked about a lot 5 years ago because of the process that led to its inception, to its creation. But I think it's really cool that Pope Francis wants to help people apply this to their day-to-day lives, and more specifically to family life, by instituting this year of the family according to Amoris Laetitia. He wants to bring joy and love to the families, or help families experience joy and love. And I think that's a very noble project, very necessary. This starts in March, and then it's going to be 1 year long, so it's going to end in 2022. I think with the big, what is it? The week of the family or something like that. There's going to be this big event. What did surprise me a little bit was that he announced this when he had just announced another theme for the upcoming year, and that would be the theme of Saint Joseph. So this year, and I think that started in December, he announced that 2021, or actually from 8 December 2020 to 8 December 2021, would be the year of Saint Joseph. And he wrote this apostolic letter, Patris Corde, with a father's heart, to highlight the virtues of Saint Joseph and to show him as an example for our times. And I was like, well, from a PR perspective, marketing perspective, is it wise to introduce two different themes for the year to come? But now that I think of it, it's actually these two themes are very compatible, because, of course, what is Saint Joseph if not a father? Someone who takes care of this family that has been entrusted to him, and is a father with a heart. Now, what more do we need to experience love and joy in families than to have a great heart? So Joseph, I think, Saint Joseph could be the patron saint for the family. That is the central theme of this upcoming year. I will link in the show notes to two articles on the Vatican News website that explain a little bit more what this upcoming year is all about, or how these two themes interconnect. And I'm sure that we will see more initiatives and more specific pointers to ways in which we can bring this theme to life, because of course this is just a theme. It's not automatically going to help people. That will require active projects. And one of the things that this article mentions about the year of Amoris Laetitia in the family is helping young people to prepare for their wedding. And I think that from my own personal, very limited experience, because in the Netherlands we don't have that many weddings in church anymore, that can be of great help to young people, because it's people kind of assume that the wedding is something that just happens. You just have to offer the ring, organize a nice party, and then the rest will come by itself. But we also know that is not true, and a lot of relationships break because of insufficient preparation, and because we don't teach young people the tools of nurturing a relationship, building a family, what it entails, and how to deal with the things that go wrong, which eventually always will happen in every life, in every relationship. And I think good marriage preparation should be all about being prepared for when the you-know-what hits the you-know-what, because that's where it starts to matter. And that is also where the power of the sacrament of marriage will fully start to come into play. I don't think you need the church when things are okay and everybody's happy and you're madly in love. No, we need help. We need our brothers and sisters in faith when things go wrong, when it starts to become difficult, when it's uphill. That, I think, is where the sacrament really is important and can be a great strength, a great help, and where the church can be a beacon and can offer people a hand that they can grab in order to pull them through these difficult times. But of course, first of all, the church needs to be aware of her own role in this, and that she has a role to play in the lives of young people that are open to it. Of course, you can't force this on anyone, but I think this is helpful in a way that it can help the church constantly turn away from herself and her own interests and future and worries, and instead help the church ask, in this case, what can we do to help these young people? What can we do to help families to have a more joyful and more loving life? And that ultimately, hopefully, will yield fruits for future generations. And if we don't, well, we see what a broken childhood and what happens when families don't offer that safe environment and don't help young people to grow up. We see the results in our current day politics and in our current society. There is so much unrest, unhappiness, so much polarization and lack of patience and lack of virtues. All these good things we are supposed to learn them first and foremost in a family. So I think that's where the focus of the church rightly should be. So this is probably a theme that I'll come back to later on in the year. But I just wanted to bring that to your attention, that this is what's happening in the Catholic Church in 2021.
When did you become an expert in thermonuclear astrophysics?
Last night. The packet. The extraction theory papers. Am I the only one who did the reading?
So I set myself the goal of reading 100 pages every day. And like all things that I want at the start of the year, I failed miserably. There have been days that I did a bit of reading. I never hit 100 pages. I did listen to some audiobooks because sometimes it would be easier for me to just rest or go for a walk and just listen to a book being narrated, but I'd never made 100 pages. So I'll just try again next week. I did start a couple of books, though, that I enjoy. And reading is all about enjoying. It's not, I didn't set myself a new reading goal just to be able to tell you at the end of this year, hey, I made it. Look, I'm so great at reading. No, I want to force myself to read more because it is good for me and it's a very enjoyable activity. So the 3 books that I'm currently reading definitely are a joy to read. The first one is a Dutch book, and it's called, in Dutch, I'll translate it in English, Een Barbarian in China, A Barbarian in China. It's written by Adriaan van Dis, who is a Dutch writer. It's not been translated in English. And it talks about a trip that he made, I think in 2007, through China. And he went to the beginning of the Silk Route and then travels through the inlands of China. And most of the book is about his, alienation, him feeling so out of place. He's a very tall guy, very Dutch. He doesn't speak Chinese, and he doesn't really understand Chinese culture. And so it's entertaining, and it's also a little bit frustrating to read this book because I'm like, well, dude, before you travel to a country, try to understand first where you are going, what the things that he describes, and that sometimes even irritate him, like the behavior of the Chinese people that he encounters, are very well known. And just, I don't know, do a bit of research, try to respect the country where you are, try to learn instead of coming there with your own preconceived ideas of what the people should behave like. Anyway, but it's interesting because he's been sometimes in the same places where I traveled, and I'm currently working on my own documentary about China. And so, of course, some of that strangeness is what I experienced myself when I went to China, where it's such a different culture from mine. And at the same time, it's where part of my roots are. I'm a quarter Chinese, so I want to learn from this society. I want to see where I come from in a certain way. And during my journey, I've discovered that there are actually quite a few Chinese elements. There have been quite a few Chinese elements in my own upbringing, And so I'm not completely foreign to that culture at all. So it's a lot of fun to put that documentary together. It's also a ton of work because I filmed this like 8 years ago. So it's a bit difficult to reconstruct what happened, but I think I'm going to make it. But it will still be quite a considerable effort in the weeks to come. But reading this book is a nice source of inspiration for how to tell a story like this. The second book that I'm currently reading is a popcorn book. It's popcorn entertainment, but it's such a fun read. It's the first book of a trilogy written by A.G. Riddle. Name is truly Riddle. It's not Tom, by the way. And this first book is Winter World. And I discovered it by accident because I was browsing through my Goodreads friends, and there was this one person who said, "You're going to enjoy this. This is a fun book. It reads like a movie." And that's exactly it. This just reads like one of those disaster movies / space movies. So it's a bit of The Martian. It tries to do, science. It's a bit like The Day After Tomorrow, where it's about the Earth cooling down. But in this book, it's not caused by human behavior. It's caused by aliens. And so there's this big object that they discover that is heading for the sun. And at the same time, there is this cooling down of the Earth. There is a huge winter that doesn't seem to end. And soon, life on Earth will be almost impossible. So what do? Like in every box office hit of 10 years ago, of course, you send a team into space, not with scientists, but with a guy who's been in prison. And then there's this woman who is actually in the ISS space station to study plants, but all of a sudden she needs to be rescued and then accompanies the rest of the crew to this alien object that is heading full speed for the sun. So everything about the book is unlikely, and it's like, oh wow, that's a little bit too convenient, but it's such a fun read. And it's a page turner. You just want to know what happens next. And sometimes it's a bit like, oh yeah, right. But like a lot of things, it's like The Martian in the sense that it tries to be serious about the things it's describing, but at the same time, everything is so convenient. And there are things that that the writer glosses over so quickly, but it doesn't matter as long as you kind of lower your expectations and just want to have an easy, fun popcorn read for entertainment that literally reads like a movie. This is great. It's called Winter World, and there are 2 more books that follow up on the events in this book. I haven't finished this one yet, but so far, so good. And then the third book that I started reading is a big one. It is the third book in the Wheel of Time series that I vowed to read this year. I think we're talking about 12 books or 14 books. Ooh, it's very challenging. Means I have to read more than one of those big books every month. This one is more than 600 pages long. It's called The Dragon Reborn. But I have to say, I'm getting used to the writing style of the writer. And I'm a bit more familiar with the backstory. The first book was so hard to get through because you get introduced to this entire new fantasy world. The guy is great at world building, but you also get lost in the names, and it refers to, by the way, the author is Robert Jordan. He died a number of years ago. And the series is actually finished by Sanderson, who is already one of my favorite writers, very much alive. So now that I've worked my way through the first 2 books, I'm starting to see a little bit more of you don't have to think in every chapter, who is this guy again and what's going on right now? And what is also encouraging me to read Wheel of Time is that they're currently working on a television series. I think it's Amazon that is working on this. And this is considered by many people to be kind of like similar to Tolkien and the world building that we see in Tolkien's works about Middle Earth. Wheel of Time is similar. It's different. It's a different genre. It's already starting to change a little bit in this third book. The first one is very much like The Lord of the Rings. But I've been told, and I already can notice it, that it's finding its own voice over time. But it's definitely a work, I think, that leads itself to a television series along the lines of Game of Thrones. I just hope that they do justice to the story and that they don't mess it up, because it's easy to go wrong with this. It's also what a lot of people are a bit wary about when it comes to the television show that Amazon is currently filming of the Lord of the Rings prequel. Apparently filming is already done, and now everybody is like, oh, is it going to be good or is it going to be terrible? And everybody wants it to be good, but is it going to be The Mandalorian or is it going to be Star Trek Discovery? I would say I'm so sorry that I'm not more positive about Star Trek Discovery, but I haven't seen the season's finale yet. But this season, for me, was the most disappointing one. Anyway, it's not here and there. The books are good, and nobody can mess those up anymore because the series is finished. Here's hoping that I can actually read the entire Wheel of Time series. I've already read 2 books in 2020, so only 12 to go, 1 per month. I should be all right. Let's stay hopeful.
The scientifically wonderful world of science.
What sort of science?
Welcome back, science friend.
Well, we all thought that 2020 was a year that just wouldn't end. And it felt so long because of the pandemic and us having to work from home and just... It was a terrible year. At least and when something is terrible, time goes by so slowly. But it turns out that from a scientific point of view, we were all wrong. 2020 was not a year that was longer than other years. In fact, from a point of view of science, this year was shorter than all the years before. To be more precise, it was like... Now I have to be precise. I say I'm going to be precise. But this 2020 has been passing by quicker than any of the years from the past 5 decades that preceded. Isn't that crazy? So apparently, in 2020, the year has been spinning a little bit faster than in previous decades. And I think it's about it all is about half of a second faster. So 2020 has been half of a second shorter than 2019. Isn't that crazy? So now they're talking about doing a small correction, maybe do like a negative leap second. What I didn't know was, and I've read this in some of the articles about this, that since the 1970s, no less than 27 leap seconds have been added to the time to keep atomic time lined up with solar time. So we already have these leap seconds, and it turns out that now for 2020, we may have to subtract a second, like a negative leap second. How cool is that? And you'd say, well, what is half a second on an entire year? But this is important for navigation, for satellites, for everything that depends on the atomic clock. Apparently, if things go out of whack a little bit too much, then you get disalignment and all sorts of catastrophes may follow. This also made me think, geek as I am, of the Superman movie. Maybe not the first one, but definitely the most famous one, where Superman experienced a very tragic event. I won't spoil it for you in case you haven't seen it. This is the Christopher Reeves Superman movie. And he's so distraught that he flies up and then starts circling around the Earth, trying to reverse time. And you see him just speeding up. And then slowly the globe slows down and starts going in reverse. And so he continues to fly around the Earth. And the more he flies, the more the Earth goes back in time. And then he stops and then he turns around again until the moment that Earth is kind of back in time and going in the right direction anymore. He flies down to he arrives right before the catastrophic events that made him want to fly back in time. And he saves the day because he's Superman. Well, none of that is of any scientific value. But it made me think of that. Well, hey, maybe Superman is flying around the Earth, and maybe that has caused the Earth to speed up a little bit. I don't know. The scientific reasons for Earth spinning faster are still being investigated. Some scientists are postulating that this may be another result of global warming, more specifically about the ice crust on both poles diminishing. We know that this is happening. And that may influence in some way or another the Earth's rotation. I'll let you know when I discover what's truly going on. It's probably not Superman.
We are on the cutting edge of technology.
Wow. Well, what does that mean?
Just plug it in. It's going to say, hey, I see you plugged in a new device. And it's going to load in the appropriate drivers. You'll notice that this scanner build... Whoa.
Well, all your technology stuff, it just ends in disaster.
But there is one more thing.
It's time to talk about technology. I finally found some time to reorganize my smart home. You know, I love my smart devices. I've got the Google, these mini speakers. I think they're called a Google Mini. And I've got the Nest Hub, this little, looks like a small TV. And I've actually got several of them. I've got the big one, and I've got two smaller ones. And the big one is in the kitchen because I use it for recipes. I use it to listen to the news in the morning. And I wanted the big one in the kitchen because when I'm cooking, there's always a lot of noise. There is the ventilation. There's the water cooker that makes a lot of noise. The sizzling stuff in the pans. And the Nest Hub can go pretty loud. But then next to my computers, both upstairs and downstairs, I have the smaller screen. And I use that, for instance, to turn on the lights, to look up stuff. I love to have that small screen. Plus, if I'm not using it, it's showing me photos from Google Photos. And those are very nifty small devices, very limited in what they can do. But I'm so glad that I have them. But one thing that I implemented earlier on, I think 2 years ago, I bought these intelligent light bulbs. A couple of them were Philips Hues, which are awesome. And I'm not just saying this because Philips is a Dutch brand, but just it's so well done, so well implemented. The colors are fantastic, and the entire system works so well also with Google. But then they're also very expensive. So I went Dutch for a number of other light bulbs, and I bought them from Xiaomi, which is this Chinese brand. And those at first seemed to be perfectly fine. You had to install a Chinese app to control them, and that would link or have sync to Google. So that if you say, for instance, turn on the lights in the kitchen, it would send that command to this app, probably to China. Then there is another message coming from China that tells my kitchen lights to turn on. And there is no way to control everything from within one app. So the colors, the color schemes for the Chinese light bulbs, I have to manage them in the Chinese app, and it's not very good. And then the Philips lamps, I control them through the much better constructed Philips Hue app. The things you can do with this are amazing. So, for instance, I can let the lights in my bedroom slowly go from 0% to 100%. I can even mimic the colors of light of a sunrise, and so I can do the same in the evening, where I have this one lamp in the middle of the room that function as the moon, and I turned it to this pale blue color that I associate with the moon. But then I also had a lamp on my nightstand, and I would turn that like a nice warm orange that feels like you're sleeping near a campfire. And then I would combine those schematics with the ambient sounds that Google can play. So if I say the trigger word and then good night, it starts dimming these lights, and slowly, bit by bit, the campfire will go out. But it also plays this crackling sound of a campfire, and it's been wonderful. It's been really, just a great way. I loved just saying goodnight to my smart device, and then having this whole routine automatically, start working. And it was very calming, had a very calming effect on me. And the same in the morning, where instead of getting this blaring alarm, it would slowly start to intensify the light in my bedroom, and it would play a sound file with chirping birds and whatnot. I had it all figured out, and I was so proud of myself. It took me days to get it right. And then I started to move some equipment around. And I moved one light bulb to another room, and then the app got updated and lost connection with some of the Chinese light bulbs, and it was a mess. It was a mess. I started to add, I had these smart, outlets. It's like a thing, even if you don't have a smart lamp, you can still plug it into this smart device, and you can turn it on. For instance, my Christmas lights, I had them on a programmable AC outlet thing, and for some reason that stopped working, and I couldn't get it back to work, and I couldn't. I don't know. It didn't sync anymore. So every time I would bark commands at my Google device, it would start replying me with, "I'm sorry, but that device is not available right now." And the same with the light bulbs. I said, "We'll turn off all the lights," and then it's like, "I turned off 8 lights. I'm sorry, I cannot turn out the kitchen lights. I cannot find this and that light." And these messages of this smart device not being smart enough to figure out what was wrong started to pile up. And so every evening when I wanted to go to bed and sleep, I said, well, good night, and then turning off 16 lights. "I'm sorry, I cannot find 8 lights. I'm sorry, there is a problem with the device that you wanted me to use. I'm sorry." And it just went on and on. It's like, oh, for goodness sakes, so frustrating. But then in order to get everything back in, working, I had to reset some of the light bulbs. It's a ton of work. Like who is really smart here? Who's supposed to be smart? Like, turns out that I have to do all the smart stuff. Whereas my Google Hub is just is dumb as a rock. So, and because it's so much work to figure out how to reset those light bulbs and reconfigure everything, I was procrastinating. And so every evening I would get this litany of errors from my Google device. Well, no more. Like it's the new year. I'm finally going to reset everything and make it work again. And yeah, it actually took me about half a day to get everything working again. But now, finally, I can go to bed in peace and no longer is this is my Google Hub telling me what, how it's not that smart. And there's another thing that I added, and that is like a remote control that came with my Hue hub and the 2 lights that came with it. And I just never got around installing it. But now I can just, instead of talking, I can just press a button. It's a miracle. This is the way that lights have worked for hundreds of years. Well, not really hundreds of years, but like the joy of just being able to press a button and then the light goes on. It's a light switch. It's a miracle of smartness. It's such an amazing invention. Oh my goodness. Yeah. But I'm actually really glad that I have that light switch. Why? Because I've noticed that it is pretty hard in the morning to think clearly. I'm just awakening from this slumber. And then in order to turn on the lights, I have to formulate this phrase like, hey, so-and-so, turn on the bedroom lights and the lights in the hallway as well. And start playing music. It's like 100 things that I need to think of. And it's so much easier to just press a switch. So after implementing all this smart stuff, I'm basically back where I started with a light switch, and I couldn't be more excited about it. All right, with that, I'm going to wrap things up here. Thank you so much for listening. And of course, for those of you that are supporting me on Patreon, thank you so much. There will be another show waiting for you on the closed-off secret part of my podcasting activities. And it's called Father Roderick to the Max. This week, I'll be talking about something I discovered about my fatigue. And I figured out a way to reduce it. I'm also going to talk about Chinese cooking. I'll give you some tips on what I've learned this past week. Talk a little bit about perfectionism versus productivity. And I'll divulge some sacristy secrets. And I have a tip for you on how to get Battlefront 2, this amazing Star Wars game by Electronic Arts, how you can get it for free, and what I think of that game. All that and more in Father Roderick to the Max, available to all my patrons over at patreon.com/Father Roderick. Have a great week. Don't lose hope. There's always a tomorrow that is going to be brighter than today. And make sure that you contribute to that. All right, enough preaching. See you later. Take care. And that's a wrap. Still 1 hour. Whoa. Smart switch. Inge asks, why didn't you ask me to fix it? I can do that myself. All right. Hello, everyone. And Peaceful Dusk, thank you so much for the super chat. I appreciate it. The chat says, I came from an extremely broken home life, and home never even felt like home to me, but like a prison. Yeah, it's a reaction to what I said about the importance of families being a safe harbor for people and how much suffering it can cause if it isn't. Thank you for sharing that with us. Mike is there, Pikachu is there, Even is there, Nine Chifra. Michiel van Wessem is there from Leicester. Buggo Productions TV, Anthony. We got so many new names in the chat. That's awesome. Frank from Slovenia. Excellent. Mike Kuipers is there. Cecile is there. Titanium 3, good morning. Evo is there, who sent me some overlays for the stream. Thank you so much. I've seen them in my email, just haven't had time to look at them. We got Steven and David, who says, I just got this in my recommended files in YouTube. Is this a sermon? I'm sorry. Well, by now you know what this is. It's a podcast that I record every week. So my apologies if you were expecting a sermon. It wasn't me. It was YouTube's algorithm. But sometimes I preach. Maybe a little bit too much from time to time. Let's see. Weavern says, we have nearly the same here in Germany a few months ago. Like an insurrection. Pikachu is playing Dynasty Warriors 9 while listening. Radagast Studio from France. Love your screen name. Radagast. The Brown. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. Absolutely. I didn't want to mention that because I do that so often. It's a bit cliche, but it's so true. Darth Cynical from Tennessee. Your ministry during these times has been a blessing to this household for sure. That's good to know. Better be a blessing than a curse, right? Jim is joining us from freezing Dundee, Scotland. I hope you are doing well too. I heard that the pandemic is getting worse in Scotland, the UK, and Ireland. So I hope you're safe. Ave wants to know, why am I leaving the parish? Yeah, I've explained that also in previous broadcasts. It's because it's just the work became too much. It's so difficult to focus on all these different things, and the parish work was taking up a lot of my time. And there's a lot that parishioners don't notice or are not aware of. They only see me during Mass, so there's like, well, what is 1 hour on Sunday? But that's not all. Let's see. Oh, we had to remove some spoilers in the chat. The Simpsons is a good example of a dysfunctional family, but a good family. Yeah, it's dysfunctional, but they also love each other, and that is important. Margot is joining us from Tacoma Park. And life is fortunately very normal despite being close to Washington, D.C. Marike is greeting everyone from the Netherlands. That's very good. Ta wants to know, will there be a chance for you to react to Astartes by the channel of the same name? I have never heard of Astartes. I need to Google that. I'm sorry. Astartes. It's a Warhammer fan film project. Is that correct? Warhammer 40,000. I'll check it out. I've never heard of it before. What about families with single parents? Well, like I said, people are very resilient, and even though there may be this ideal picture of what a family should be like, in reality, it's rarely ever like that. And so I would say always try to make the most out of the given situation. And love and joy can heal a lot of things that may be wrong. So it's love and joy are a good remedy for broken situations or situations that are not ideal. Let's see what else. Never met a Chinese person I didn't like. Well, good for you. Jim likes audiobooks, very relaxing. Listen to all 5 Game of Thrones audiobooks. Wow, that must have taken you like a century. Veronica's niece is half Taiwanese. Good. I got into ancient China by playing Dynasty Warriors. Joe is watching from Miami. Good, good, good. It's a fascinating culture and fascinating history. Sometimes also extremely violent. And, There is good and bad, like in any country, any culture. What is a second to about 31 billion years? You're right about that. If time travel is possible, people would already be here from the future. Who says they aren't already? Just saying. Superman and the Flash go at the same amount of speed. Maybe. Are people still talking about Christmas songs? I'm pretty sure some of the writers of The Simpsons are time travelers. Yeah, they did predict a lot of things. Absolutely. As Molly Weasley said to Ginny, never trust something that can think if you can't see where it keeps its brain. That's a good one. I did not know that Molly said something like that. Culver is watching from LA. Stay safe, stay healthy. I'm hearing it's still pretty dangerous there with the virus and all. Sandy says, I thought about the things going on in my country. I always have hope. What you all saw was not indicative of my circle in the U.S. I absolutely agree with you. What we saw was, it's a fringe group of people. Thankfully, most Americans that I know are good people. There seems to be an outsized emphasis on families that look good on the outside, mom and dad married before they had children, etc. If the children don't feel safe and loved, nothing else matters. That's absolutely true. I agree with you, Margot. What looks good on the outside, it's not always good on the inside. People are very good at keeping up appearances. And apparently, from the outside, broken families or irregular situations, if there's love, if there's forgiveness, can actually be wonderful families. You can't judge from the outside. Do you see a link between the Force and the power of faith? Both the faith and the Force can do miracles. And just like the Force, religion too can be used for good or bad, as an incentive to change the world for the better, and also sometimes as a pretext to destroy. Toujours un plaisir de se retrouver ensemble sur le live de Father Roderick. Je suis d'accord. Oh, Molly said it in the Chamber of Secrets. I don't know. I haven't seen the movies in a long time. C'est tellement drôle, on discute dans l'espace commentaire. Yes. That's where the chat room is for us, to just chat. Does the Vatican have any information on the existence of aliens? No. The church is not actively seeking life in outer space, but the Vatican does have its astronomers. And one of them, a Jesuit from the U.S., actually has talked at length about the potential for extraterrestrial life and what that would mean to faith, etc. So I'm just looking up if he has a website. His name is Guy Consolmagno. I'm just going to paste that in the chat if I can. Do I have access to the chat? No, I have to sign in. Okay, well, anyway, just Google for Vatican astronomer aliens. You'll find some interesting articles and interviews that he gave. Very well, Ivo. I'm glad you have some time off as well, because you've been working really hard to help us with the streams. If God would have the same plan of salvation for aliens. Yeah, he goes into stuff like that. He's on my list of people I would love to do a documentary with. Speaking of which, I talked at length about my bigger projects for this year in the latest episode of The Walk. And one of the documentaries that I would love to make is about faith and astronomy, because it's always been, one of my big hobbies when I was a child. I've always been looking at the stars. Maybe that's why I always felt akin to Luke Skywalker. But yeah, Consal Magno is a great teacher as well. Very interesting guy. And he knows what he's talking about. So thanks for reminding me of that idea. Did you ever meet John Paul II? Oh, gosh, yes. Many times. I was in Rome for 2 years when he was still Pope, so I've seen him on a weekly basis. Steven says, as a patron, I would be so happy if you did an interview in English. Yeah, with Guy. I've talked about this project last year. Was it last year? Maybe already 2 years ago when I was in the Vatican. But of course, then COVID happened and all those kind of vague projects went out of the window. But maybe this is a good year to pick that up again. There are so many cool things I would love to spend my time on. But that also requires me to free up space and time, maybe make some changes to what I commit to. So check out The Walk for my ponderings about that. Hello, Larry. Hello, Alex from the Philippines. It's good to see you here in the chat. And Gus is viewing from Japan. I did not know that I had a listener from Japan. That is so cool. From Fukuoka. That's a country I would so love to visit. Unfortunately, it's now also the pandemic is also causing problems in Tokyo, and numbers are rising very quickly. I cannot wait for this pandemic to be over, so we can, we can travel again, and I can make documentaries. Oh well. All right, I'm going to put this show online and quickly record my show for the patrons, and I'm going to read my books after that. Thanks for stopping by. Have a great rest of your